Okay.
Sure.
Hello, everybody.
Bueno.
Thank you so much for joining us today with World Unity Week. It's an honor and a privilege to be here today with my elder and very beautiful soul that I have had the opportunity and the privilege to meet, Dr. Wentsler. I'm sorry, Dr. Wentsler Nosie Sr., and he's coming to us from the Apache Stronghold in Oak Flat, Arizona. And I would just like to say welcome, Dr. Wentsler. It's an honor to have you here, and thank you so much for coming and taking time to share with us what is happening at Oak Flat and the Apache Stronghold. Are you there? So it looks like, oh, there you are. You're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Hi. You're on mute again? I can't hear you.
Okay, how's that?
Now we can hear you.
Can you,
Yes.
can you hear
Thank
me
you.
now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry, I lost the first part of what you were saying. If that's okay, could repeat one more time?
I was just welcoming you and saying thank you so much for being here. And it's just been an honor to have met you. And I'm thrilled that you're here with us today to share about what's happening at Oak Flat and giving an awareness to the entire globe about how we can support you in this effort to save the sacred lands of the Apache Nation. So I'm thrilled that you're here to share with us today.
Okay, I'm really thankful. Thank you all for having me. Of course, like they say, uh, if things were going well, I won't be on your show today, but not going well, not just here, but it seems like everywhere else. And so I think, people are really taking positive steps and working together and really working on what's happening in the world. And so I'm really happy to be here with all of you. And I thank you for giving me or giving us this time. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder if you wouldn't mind opening us up with a prayer today.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you.
Ganashita ahead the nation Chicago. The know how the tension can be cut. The Euro Shaka China Chats walk Julius. The Ganashita the Nagosan because he kayu he walk in law. The walk Shiki Echo Sterulesh. The Jane he the walk on Yako Cheko Sterulesh ko Ganashita. The Nassis Gas Chihiko Sterulesh an. I didn't show and then show Nassis Cas we own like ko Ganashita. The one how you Satko. Selfs enkel hat in de ilhinne kleko sterolesco de chebe ste kun steko a here de Jane become nasita sherishninko she klishkin kun zi the jorles oh become nasita here. Thank you. um, I just gave blessings to Mother Earth and everything above it that is our relative, and the things that we are to talk about today, and those that are listening around the world, and that through our minds and hearts we're in one together of an understanding about what spirituality is, and that everything that's bad that that works within the evil ways, that it does not come within that to destroy what we all try to do, and God's greatest, the Yosin, the Creator's greatest gift to us all. So I ask that He just bless us all in our journey and all the things that we do. And to all the listeners, which I know there's a lot of them that probably do what we do already, and thank them for that, and thank the Creator for blessing us in that way and watching over us.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that blessing. So, I really would just like to share a little bit about basically when I started becoming a water protector. My heart was very moved with Standing Rock, and there was just this burning desire to do something. And when I went to Oak Flat this year, that same feeling emerged in me. And since then, I have had this incredible desire to support and stand in solidarity with my elder and his family and the entire Apache Nation to fight to save Oak Flat, and realizing the beauty and the magic that is there, that moved my entire being and has shifted things in me that I still am not fully aware of yet. And that is why we are coming with you today. I'm so happy that our elder Wentsler has joined us, because it's an issue that has been, I know, a long time for you, Wentsler. Your entire life you've been having this fight, and it's coming to a head. And it's a very important, critical time for all eyes and ears to be looking at Oak Flat and what's happening there. So, if you could please just give us some of the background and some of what's happening right now at Oak Flat.
Okay, and again, I want to thank you and be able to just to be able to share, the magnitude, I guess, of not just our people but all people. First of all, I just want to say that to kind of have people understand is that yes, I live on the San Carlos Apache Reservation. I was born here, but if you look at my grandfather, well, actually, my great grandfather was forcibly marched here as a prisoner of war, and also with his son, which was my grandfather. And then my father being born in the first concentration camp, which was the prison that held our people, and then me coming, as my father's son, and growing up in a time that my grandfather and my uncles and my dad would say that they made all these promises that one day we'll be able to go home, one day we'll be able to go back, and they used to sit around and cry about it. And as a young boy, I remember listening to all the stories that they would refer to about their life. And I remember being really young, probably about 5 or 6, and mentioning to them that, that I'll go home. And I just remember them laughing and then crying. My grandfather crying and saying that, grandson, if you do, I'll go with you. And then they just went on to back to what, they were doing, crying and reminiscing about, life. And but little did I know that we, like everybody else, we have prophecies, and those prophecies were in that time, in that moment. And little did I know that my mother, which was really, she was really influential, because a lot of the women and I believe in all the tribes, they really went underground with a lot of our ways, because of the persecution that we would get if we acknowledge our language, we acknowledge our ceremonies, and the horrifying stories that occurred to the holy ones, that if they were practicing, what the military people would do. So anyway, a lot of that went underground, but I didn't know, that I came in a time where I guess not only being given all this stuff from the ones before me, but also born into it and understanding it. And so anyway, I grew up in that way, that a lot of things didn't make sense. A lot of things didn't refer to us. And I just got really more interested in about the way we were and why we're living like this on the reservation. Why were we different than the people on the outside? Why did things differently apply to us? And so then, as I got older, just, really being involved with our holy ground and our ancient ceremony, the Sun Makesha, which is the sunrise ceremony. And they began to understand, what occurred. So I guess, our holy ground, we call it holy ground, and no difference than what the Lakotas will call the ghost dance and what happened to their people at that time. And it's the same thing with us here. A lot of our people were killing themselves. A lot of people didn't want to live anymore. And the military people would write a report and say that it's like taking a wild animal and bringing them into the house and trying to make them a pet. They die. And that's what we're doing to these people, by trying to change them and make them somebody that they're not. So a lot of our people were losing their lives, either taking it themselves or, something occurring that they rebelled against the system. And so, those things really touched me to where when I understood what the ceremonies was, it really hit me that, we were exiled out of our holy places where it all originated from. And so when, in talking with, at that time when I was really young, talking with my grandmother and those that were older, would make reference to that, but they spoke of it in a low tone so that they won't be heard because, they still live in a time of repercussion. And so anyway, just kind of, growing up that this was wrong and growing up with the medicine mans that, left this world in the 60s and 70s, I was able to be with them and them to really tell me, what happened and what was going on. And I realized that, one of the things that our people were going through was the assimilation process and all the tragedies that came with that, which was ugly. And it was a difficult time for all of them. But, I remember my mother really cradling me in this walk, in this journey that I was going to make. And I was, just summarizing it really short, I was teased her and I told her, I said, Mom, I'm living your life. I haven't lived mine, I'm living yours. And I did say it in a very concerned way. And her response to me was, son, you are living my life. The wishful way of life I wish I would have had is what you're living. But with what you do, it's going to better your children. And she goes, and what I'm referring to is who we are as a people, our religious ways, it's all intertwined with every breath we take, it's intertwined. But this new way of life is breaking that apart to where it's separating it. And she said, it's really scary. So what I pray for is that what I do for you is that you're going to do for your children and that your grandchildren will have a better life. And I think what our people were really reaching for, which I guess they felt was really left, was the spiritual part of us. So what they were saying in Apache, America can contain us physically, but they cannot contain us spiritually. And if anything that they were holding on to was that spiritual way. So they knew that, we're going to be always in chains and that we will never be. But the one thing they wanted to keep was their spiritual ways. And so they had a dream of going back home. The prophecies talked about going back home. And this is where our deities, in Apache, we call them the God, we call them those names. And I guess if you translate it more in a better definition in the white English, is that they're deities, they're angels, and they reside in these mounds. And so, just being a father and having my daughter Alicia and her dance is when I went to the mountain of Mount Graham and Chishnchasan, the name of it. And that's when my whole life turned at the age of, I was around 30, 31, 32. My life changed because when I went there, they arrested me for praying. And they reminded me about my people being exiled out of there over 150 years ago. And they told me never to come back. And I just remember coming back, kind of feeling like a rape victim. I mean, I hate to use that example, but that's the closest I can come to because it just really exploited me in every which way. And I mean, there's a lot more stories to that. But anyway, it changed my life forever because when I got arrested, I went to court. And in the town of Safford, I was acquitted. And when my attorneys was talking to the prosecuting team, they got a lot of heat from the University of Arizona, all the corporations that were involved in the telescope project. And he asked, why was I acquitted? What they told him was that they were afraid to challenge our religion because the religion gave us, the time immemorial, the definition of where we came from. And if they were to continue to fight me in the court, then all that would be revealed. And little did I know that Oak Flats was just around the corner, the Che Begoste, another really sacred site to our people. And we didn't even know that that was doing boiling behind closed doors with the copper mine. And so it just really sent me on this journey to begin to fight for these our sacred places that hold our deities. And you know, it's just not something that I jumped into just overnight. It was something that I feel like, you know, I'm talking to many of the elders that are gone today and those that are left, that it was really, you know, we are in that time. You know, this is that moment that this sacred battles are going on all over the world, but more importantly, you know, for us to really battle and really uh, put a foothold and regain, you know, first our spiritual ways. And so in that, you know, I found that, you know, our people have really suffered tremendously, that we had to retrain ourselves. We had to, you know, really look at the ugliness of what happened to our people and accept that. And then from there, rebuild ourselves, you know, with the spirituality of our sacred ceremonies. And so, you know, that's when I started to lead the people back to Mount Graham, back to Oak Flats, to take us back to these ancient places where we belong and where our language, our songs, you know, our prayers, and then our conversing with the deities and where that all came from. And so within that, you know, jumping ahead, then it revealed itself that this was a bigger issue. I mean, that's big in itself, but what I'm referring to is that when you talk about the environment, when you talk about the climate, it really connected, you know, because Mother Earth is really being devastated. The devastation of it, you know, is really hurting all over the world. And so for some reason, Oak Flat kind of gave the avenue of exploiting what the United States has been doing to not just Indian country, but to the American people, of the deception about laws, about exemptions when they give to companies to have the right, and for these companies to have more of a right, kind of like a human being over Mother Earth itself. So it really revealed all these really ugly things that are occurring from discrimination with religion, from water contamination forever in the Southwest, and setting the precedents for Indian country as well as, you know, America itself on the religion, as far as, you know, eliminating one of the oldest ones from the face of the earth. And then it comes to the characteristics of all American people. You know, even us Indian people, we're in that equation that we all need to wake up. And so what I tell a lot of the non-Indians is that, you know, to help you understand is that you need to look at me as your ancestor, what you people went through before we did. You know, so if you look at all this colonization and capitalism, you know, slavery, look at all of that. They went through it before we did. They mastered that. And now, you know, the native people here or around the world, we're the last ones. And so I tell them, to really help you understand what I'm talking about, is that if you look at me, this is what your generations before went through, and this is what your generation had fought. But same thing with us, you know, we have to be smart and not assume that we're the ones that are going to win this. In a unified spiritual way, all people have to come together in order to fight this greatest evil. So anyway, in a nutshell, I mean, there's so many different components, but in a nutshell, you know, Oak Flats, is a sacred and holy place that holds our deities where we originated from, that holds like the word, you know, of our existence, is that's where it comes from. And the reminder of how the earth, the mother, coincides with us and how important she is to all of us. And that's the continuation of our being. And so, but not only that, like I said, it just really exposed from how land transfers, you know, and how corporations have taken, you know, these sacred places and places. And like I try to tell people, Oak Flat, you know, I try to make people understand, like, these sacred places are females. Like, so with Oak Flat, You can actually be born there and die of old age because you have everything that can be provided for you. And it seems like, and this is what our old people refer to, is that we can't kill these places. Once these places goes, then there's nowhere else in the world that you'll be able to find them, because there are male mounds and there are female mounds. And the female mound is the one that provides things and takes care and shelters the people. And so that's the battle that we have, right now, that's ongoing. But in a nutshell, that's kind of who I am. That's kind of where I came, what I've been doing, and this is what we're facing, and the tragedy from the whole thing. But it really has exposed the United States entirely of how they've done things in different places.
Right. And it is so important, these sacred places, because it's the remembrance. It's like that was my experience when I went there. It was just like the tears flowed and I didn't even know where they were coming from. But something in my body just knew, like it just was so moving. And when we have these places to be able to go to, like I'm Apache as well, and didn't had never stepped foot on those lands, and I'm sure there's probably many other people who have never been to a sacred site like that, and we can't lose them, because that remembrance, when we merge back, when we come back to those places, there is such a deep remembrance of where we come from, that it grounds us and it reminds us of the priorities that we need to have in being a part of that nature and a part of that divine feminine that is willing to provide for us and nurture and take care of us, and how we can also reflect that back to these lands in our actions, and the reverence that we give back when we visit those places. So Oak Flat is, we just wanted to kind of go through, is dealing with Resolution Copper, who is trying to put a 1,000-foot hole that is 2 miles wide in the heart of these sacred lands and waters, and it has been, it was in a have to pass bill. I'm just giving a little background information of what is happening and what we're dealing with here, that McCain threw in hours before the bill was signed. So there was no review of it, there was no awareness of it, and there was no one else's input as to whether this was going to be put in the bill or not. And the bill had to be signed, knew it was going to be signed. And so it was a very underhanded way to attain the land. I know that they've been trying to get the land for many, many years prior to that, and there's been this constant battle, and it had been protected by the United States at some point. And now in these dirty deals that they do behind the scenes, have acquired the land and have given it to two foreign mining companies, two of the biggest foreign mining companies on the globe, to execute the land. And can you speak a little bit about that, and some of what has been your experience, and how this has come about, and just any insights that you can share with us, so we can have a deeper understanding of what's truly happening here.
Okay, on the political side of things, what you're referring to, yes, you're right. On day one, when Resolution Copper, Rio Tinto went after Oak Flats, they never went through the process. They went strictly to our state congressional leaders, and they began to push for an exemption. So prior to the late John McCain adding the bill, the late night rider, to the NDAA, a must pass bill. Prior to that, it was taken to Congress, to the House, to the Senate, but first to the House. And they never had the support. In those years, I was walking the Hill, day after day, educating congressional leaders. And it amazes me how much they don't know. I mean, we can't assume that they know everything. They don't. I mean, they have different careers and different professions. Some of them have no knowledge of the environmental impacts that occur on projects like this. are either, what blows me away is that they're either Christian or they're not. It's just really, I mean, it's like walking in a maze in there when you're talking to these people. So it's under, the impression that, okay, I'm going to have to educate every one of these. And so I'm really helpful. I mean, I'm really grateful to not just myself, but many others that really helped. And we're able to hold off Resolution Copper getting an exemption at that time. So Paul Gosar, and he's still a state representative for Arizona, actually put it on the floor in 2014. And because I was there in DC, able to lobby against it. When he was ready to put it on the floor, he ended up pulling it because we were able to get a few Republicans to support. And so in 2014, the exemption the bill asking for an exemption for Resolution Copper was pulled. So it wasn't in 2015 when John McCain came out forcefully without telling anybody and put it as a late night rider. And so when we got word, I was on the plane. I went to DC. A lot of the doors weren't opening. And then finally, one door opened and they were telling me that McCain had put pressure on all congressional leaders, because you got to remember McCain was a committee, either on the committee or chaired committees that had a lot of projects going on in the United States. So he made sure that he pressured Congress, to not support the Save Oak Flat. And so that's how that's one of the ways he got it passed. And then on top of that, at that time, we didn't have a huge support from other tribes in America, is because he was doing the same thing. They were putting pressure on tribes, threatening about federal fundings being cut. And so it really put everybody in a hesitant position. And so anyway, that's how it passed in 2015. And so, as you were saying, the land transfer clock is ticking now. And so a lot of, in 2016, some kind of walked away and said it was, it's over, it's a done deal. But no, we had our elders, we had our medicine people, we had people like me, that believe in a miracle, that believe in that there is good people out there. But knowing that, we're fighting something really ugly and we needed to find a way to expose what was happening. So after learning so much in that period of time about what has been happening to other Indian tribes, other fights that are going on in this country, that's why I took on the battle too, because I took it on more greater, because it was much more than that, because we're talking about how this would affect all over this country, and how it would set the example, example overseas, because we're getting calls from other indigenous people, and they could not believe that the United States turned on their own native people. So if the United States is turning on their own native people, that means that the United States is not going to support native people that are being affected in the third world by big companies like Resolution Copper, Rio Tinto doing things to them. So there was just abundance of call came in from all over. So that's when I geared the fight, because it was a spiritual fight already anyway. And so that's when I went, to the spiritual part, because it had to be exposed what they were doing, this ugliness. But anyway, in the very day one, and this is what I tell the people of Arizona, day one, why did they go after exemptions? Why did they not follow every federal law that everybody in America is required to follow? How come? And then on top of that, when you get an exemption, there's a whole checklist that you have to go through. Resolution Copper never went through those checklists formally to ask Congress for an exemption. It was just given to them overnight. So I tell them in day one, an ugly deed, a deception again occurred. But now we're going to go and expose that deception. And so then on top of that, they use every which way to downgrade what we were doing in exposing this. And it's really sad, because they went as far as, trying to get some of our native people who don't live on the reservation to say that these places weren't sacred. They really went dirty, but I'm glad we stayed spiritual, because we were able to expose a lot of the dirty deeds that we were doing and reflecting back on history, most importantly. And so The spiritual fight of this really gave life again to the fight. And I'm really grateful to all the people out there like yourself who's been praying, who went there, because if it wasn't those spiritual connections that everybody got, and felt that this was ugly, then we would never be where we are right now, with the final EIS being pulled, um, and then the lawsuits being in place right now, and then the continuing fight religiously throughout the country and expanding more with religious leaders joining the fight and putting more pressure on Congress to relook at this bill. But it was really ugly day one. I mean, I tell you, it was the worst thing I ever seen. And it made me understand why in other areas tribes were losing a lot of battles. And that's why I went back to the tribal governments and had 467 tribes pass resolutions to support us on this fight, because I reminded them that it's going to affect their people. It's coming, and if we don't stand together now as governments, then you're not standing for your people. You need to stand for your people. Even though the United States has created these tribal governments, you have the right to speak for your people. You can't sit back and not do that. So it was really amazing, all that work that, took place, and how it really unified it, the government, religious Native people, activism, it just kind of all pulled us together, and so many, and growing up, sometimes they have their differences, but this one really brought everybody together. It showed that we could all work together on something really evil like this. But that's how they were able to get the land transfer. And right now, the final EIS was pulled, and they're supposed to put another final EIS. They haven't told us when, but if it reaches the time clock, then that's the scary part, because the way the legislative bill reads is that the land transfer is going to take place regardless. So right now, that's why the fight that's happening right now is so crucial with the bill that Raul Gahava for the House, that's in the House, and then Bernie Sanders that is also the other bill in the Senate. But we got to get it passed in the House, and then the lawsuits that are in place. So those are two vital things that are happening right now.
Yeah. And so when you were talking about like the areas that are being affected, and like, can you speak a little bit about if some of the repercussions that Resolution Copper would have in the areas? I know that Phoenix is pretty close, and Chandler and Mesa. What do you like? What would be happening if Resolution Copper were to move forward? How would that affect the communities? I mean, obviously Oak Flat would be completely decimated, but in the surrounding areas, how would they have to deal? What would they have to deal with as far as the repercussions of that?
Okay, and so what I'm going to say about the Phoenix and Tucson and areas, the surrounding areas, is the same effects that are going to happen to us. But the one thing that somewhat sets us apart, well, not really sets us apart, but is the religious part, is that you're talking about a sacred site that's going to totally disappear. So what I tell people, I said, it's just like people here that are Christians, and they make the journey back to the other side of the world, to these holy places, and they go there for reference, to confirm. And then when they come back here, they're so excited about preaching the word of gospel because they seen it. Well, I tell them it's the same thing here, is that all our songs, all our ancient songs, our prayers are resonated from these holy places. And if it's totally gone, then what happens to our kids? What happens to our generation? Because everything that's like within the structure of who we are, now when our children look for it, it's gone. So that's what's going to happen to us. That's going to really devastate us forever. And how are the kids in 50 years are going to believe? They'll say, "Show me," and then they just see a big pit, and then it really diminish everything that we are, because they won't believe it, because this is them destroying and killing who we are, and more importantly, killing a sacred spot, a sacred place. They're going to kill it. So that's one I tell people all over, and it's going to affect your religion, because how is your religion, you, and what you say your religion is, how can you say that when you've allowed one that's very old, oldest here in North, one of the oldest in North America, to be destroyed? So explain that to me. That's on the religious part. But when it comes to the surrounding towns, you're talking about tributaries, you're talking about aquifers, you're talking about deep water, all being contaminated, all of them. And then you're talking about what's going to be airborne. And these areas know about what has been airborne before, even though there's been federal laws that were in place to cover the environment. I mean, it still didn't do very good. Now you have a big company coming and to do this major mine that has no laws to protect what's going to be airborne. And then you have, right now, we're talking about Oak Flats, but they haven't even established where the tailings are going to go. So that's also a hidden argument that is sitting there because they're waiting for this land transfer to happen. But once this land transfer happened, they figure that the discussion of the tailings is over because it's too late. Well, the tailings sits in a tributary that runs through the towns of Kearney, Superior, and it heads towards the metropolitan area of Phoenix. And so the way they designed that is that because people in Arizona are not paying attention, it's going to hit, it's sitting on part private, and the land has been sold, part state and part government. And so the semi-studies that came out showed that if it breaks, then it's going to go through the riverbeds of the Gila River, and it's going to go to the Gila River Indian Reservation where this contamination is going to go. And then if you look at the crosswinds, they carry towards Tucson and carry towards Phoenix. And as high as it's going to be airborne really high, and it's going to lift even further. So they're talking about more contamination happening about 100 miles radius. And not only that, when it becomes a pit, you're talking about 184 degrees have to go somewhere. And so the brief study that came out showed that for 50-mile radius, the expected temperature is 10 degrees higher. So we have to begin to add 10 degrees higher, 50-mile radius. And so if you look at the devastation, it's going to affect everybody from water to what's going to be airborne. And then our climate changes already. And then if you look at where we're talking about Oak Flats, it holds a lot of water from rain and snow. So once they take it, if you kind of look at a horseshoe, and then here's the peak. Well, this is Oak Flats. Once they take that, then everything is contaminated, everything that has where water is at. And then on top of that, you have the way the winds come in and the way the clouds come in, they break, the area breaks the clouds apart, and they go to the designated area. But now that this is going to be destroyed, then now those clouds are not going to ever make it to where it goes before. And on top of that, with the heat rising that hot, it's just going to eliminate the moisture. And so you're talking about huge contamination. And so anyway, it's going to affect everybody. And for us, we're the way we look at the reservation, the way a bird flies, we're only 8 miles away. And so I'm fighting because as Indian people, we don't go anywhere. And that means that, the next generation is going to be totally affected, and that we probably would be living in a contaminated area. And I want to hold the United States responsible for that. If they're not going to do anything, somebody has to be held responsible. Since Resolution Copper, Rio Tinto has been exempt from all environmental laws. So now that people in the surrounding area begin to wake up on this, now that's where you see a lot of involvement. Now that's where you see a lot of people, non-natives getting involved, because they're realizing that it's a major, major effect. And now they're learning what the exemptions mean, that, they're totally exempt from everything. It's crazy. And even our state of Arizona, when you have our leaders representing the state, this should, Governor Ducey, all these guys should be concerned. They should be the first one, not only the tribes, they should be the first one asking what's going to be left behind. And that's why right now, when everybody argues about the environmental impact study, well, the way the bill reads right now is that regardless of the pros and cons, the land transfer is going to take place. And that's why we're fighting it, because if it takes place, then there's nothing to hold the mining companies to anything. And again, it goes further back. They're buying water all over the place. You got the Gila Valley, you got the Pinal area. They're all owned, is being owned by mining right now, and nobody's paying attention to that. And so I'm really worried about the future, because you're going to have corporations controlling the water, and we're in a scary time. So that's what I've been really hard at work trying to educate everybody in Arizona and across the country, that you have to wake up, because this is what's happening underneath us all this time. And that's why I was saying how Oak Flat has really exposed all this ugliness.
Yeah, it is very ugly. So here we are. How can the people around the globe, and how can the water protectors, how can we support the Apache stronghold and the Apache nation in this fight to save these sacred lands and waters? What can we do?
I think one is what we're all doing already, but it's to continue, and that's to pray, because we're fighting something really evil, something really ugly, and that's our first fight. And the second part to that is that we do have a bill in Congress right now. It's in the House and it's in the Senate, and it's sponsored by Raul Gahava and Bernie Sanders. Okay, that bill is to reverse everything that was done. And so what I'm hearing is that if everybody all over the country um, began to send letters to the Democratic Party, and especially to the ones in Arizona, because we can't afford to have Cinema and Mark Sally. Uh, we, we can't afford to have them on the fence. They can't wait for any more studies. I mean, they're congressional leaders and they already know these things. So as Arizona people and people in this country, we need them to support the Oak Flat, Save Oak Flat bill sponsored by Gohava. Because, in politics is that if these two come out, then you're going to have all the Democrats throughout the country supporting. They're waiting and looking at Arizona. And that's what's kind of sad, with our own congressional leaders. But this is why the work goes off into the other states, because we really need the Democrats. We really need some of the Republicans who supported before. And just in case Cinema and Mark Kelly, I'm sorry, Mark Kelly, in case, they vote against us, and we're going to need Republicans to offset those numbers. And it's really, really sad. And I live there right now. I live at Oak Flats, and I've never seen any of these leaders come. So I think with the water protectors, of how crucial this is going to be, because they know through the studies how many years this deep water, if it was to be used for domestic use, how much water it supplies to the people of Arizona and the livelihood of the people, versus contamination day one, once they start shooting to the ground. So I think as water protectors, if we look at that, that's something that we, that is all up our alley to fight, and have them, look at those studies or ask the questions if he's not asking. And sometimes what happens, and I don't know this for sure, but I'm going to be checking on it. But like John McCain had staffers, and I hear they're working for them now, and they're the ones that designed the legislative bill. So I don't want anybody to be discouraged, because what I'm finding out is that when they try to call them and they get discouraged from the staffers, well, those staffers work for John McCain and Kyle. And they're the ones that supported the bill. So eventually they're going to protect their work. And so we have to find a way to get straight to Cinema, Mark Kelly, to make up, to make their decisions, because they got to be reminded that the Democratic people, especially in tribal areas, supported them to be where they're at, so that we can have a voice, but not just for us, but for Arizona. So the water is the crucial, because no matter what happens, if we don't have water, we don't have life. And we that has to be, they have to protect that. They, as human beings, doesn't mean that we're a white, native, or whatever. As human beings, we need water, and they and as smart as they say they are, they should know that, and because that's all Arizona has left. So if they could reach out to our congressional leaders here in Arizona, and also wherever anybody's at, if they can get a hold of the congressional leader that's in the House right now, because we need to get the bill out of the House. It passed the committee. Now I was told that they hope to bring it to the floor July 22nd or July 23rd, but they'll be able to do it if they know they have enough votes. And so I'm excited. I mean, there's been a lot of hard work. I wish I would have done more. I wish I was more capable of doing more and reaching out to the people out there. But like through your help, through this broadcast today, if they can reach out to them, it'd be a tremendous, amount of that something positive will come from that if they hear from the constituents. Because I was told that when I was in DC that if their constituents can speak out, they would have to separate themselves from John McCain, and they would have to separate themselves from this bill if their if their constituents speak out. So that's one. The second one is, as the Apache Stronghold, we have filed in court. We're fighting the 1852 treaty, and also on the religious part. So I've been hitting all over the country with religious organizations to support. It's only right they do, and we've been been really successful in that. But we still need more work, and pray, because we just did our final. This is what the meeting I had yesterday, where I couldn't stay on because we're going through our final closure argument with the United States, and that was submitted last night. And so I just tell people pray, because that's a very, very important piece of this issue. And I just see that the United States has to come out with a deception in order to win this, and that's going to be their work. How can they win this with something they didn't do right in the very beginning? And so it's going to be interesting, but those are the two things that we have. But definitely, for the water protectors, we really need help on this water. Maybe, I can get with you again, and we can go over the numbers of what's going to be contaminated, and so forth. But yeah, it's really getting with congressional leaders at this point right now for the bill.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Wentsler, do you have a little more time?
I have a few more minutes.
Okay, good, because we have music behind this in case you needed more time, so we can go a little further if you're able. There's a lot of good questions that have been going up.
Yeah.
Okay. Good,
Yeah,
good.
there are they're asking talking about hitting them where it hurts in the banking. The question is, what country is the head office, and what exchange do they sell their shares on? And go to the shareholders in a big way, go for the pocket as well. And that seemed to have worked with DAPL being able to pull money out of those people who are supporting this stuff. Is that, do you have ideas or like a way that we can support in that way for people who are outside of the country? Or
No, definitely. If I have people outside of the country that can help us, we definitely need that. I've been so involved with the fight directly, because they were exempt. It was like a bunch of zombies walking around. You had to kind of put a brain in the zombie to wake him up that what this exemption means. So that took a lot of my time, to really wake up people, what's going on, from Native people to non-Native people. And I spend most of my time educating, but whatever help can get from people, because they're out of England, the Rio Tinto, and anything that we do back, in their backyard and raise that attention, because I know what they did in Australia is the same thing they're going to do here, and yet they're publicly saying that they're not going to do it again, but yet they're totally ignoring everything here. And so however we can get help from the outside people there, I'll be grateful, because we got to show them that this issue is also in their backyard.
The other thing we can do is some of us have the large virtual groups here that we're there for Standing Rock. So use us as a platform. We'll post up as much as you want. And if you want to do more speaking things, we can set up a program and advertise it. And, because we can't. DAPL was beaten. We cut the head off that snake, but there's all kinds of snakes all over. They're not all oil either, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like that because when I was 21 years old, I'm 62 now, but when I was 21, I went to Washington. I remember opening a door for this elder gentleman. He was telling me he was 75 years old, and he was happy we're going to the Secretary of Interior, and at that time they were going to talk to the Native people, said that Native leaders, and he was so happy. He was telling me it took him 75 years to finally get a meeting, finally be there. He was so excited. And then after the meeting, I ended up sitting close to him. And at the end of the meeting, I was looking at him like, did he understand that we just got lip service? We didn't get nothing, you know? And he really inspired me because what I said to myself was, when I turn 75, I don't want to be what happened to him. Something happened, and that meant that I'm going to have to work really hard. But my point is that yes, because what I'm going after, I'm not going to end here. I'm going after the Constitution of the United States on freedom of religion. And if we have a unified effort from everyone, then it's like I told people, I'm shooting the prayer arrow to the heart of this country because it's wrong. It's definitely wrong the way we are being treated and the way we had to be in the living conditions that we have, and more importantly, to deny us the right of our religion. And so, like I told my attorneys, this is where it doesn't end. We're going to the heart of this Constitution. I said, we have to be put on trial. Is going to be putting a religion on trial. And I said, so they better, fix this before it gets too late. But no, whatever way you guys can help, I'm grateful. I mean, thank you for offering.
And Christina on the chat says that the Australian water protectors are fighting Rio Tinto as well, and is suggesting that we team up with them against Rio Tinto.
I would love that. I mean, we definitely do. I tell the people here, it's like mercury. You can't get rid of it, but you can control it. And if we can work with them, we can control it. And now that they have Native people here, it's a world attention now. And if America can do that to us, they can do it anywhere. So we need to fix it. So if there's a way that we can come together and somebody has that idea of doing it and working on it, man, I'm for that too, because I'm done with these guys, this mining. My ancestors fought them for what they were going to do to this planet, to this earth, to our mother, and I'm still fighting them. So no, whatever we can do on that, I'll be grateful.
That'd be beautiful. So how would people be able to contact you, or there's many people around watching? How would you like people to reach out to you for ideas and expression and support for this?
I don't know if you have our website. If they can go to that and reference this broadcast, because then I can separate, because I know those are the ones that want to do something, that heard this program. There's times that I get so many people, but they're half interested in it because it hasn't really affected them yet. And sometimes we get lost in that when they're not really there yet. But if these people are really there to do something, then I would say, send me a notice to the website and reference this broadcast here. And what I'll do is I'm going to take them and then work with our team to work with them of establishing something.
Angelique, do you have the link for the website that you can put in there?
I do.
I reached out to you on Facebook as well, brother.
Oh, okay.
And
I'm at Oak Flats. I've been there for like almost 2 years now, and I really and I was telling people that I'm not so getting me as an interview is rare. So and I tell people it's just that I'm praying every day. I'm that's the only thing I have left to fight this. And I'm just so grateful to all the people who showing up, and like yourself, I'm so grateful because we really need everybody in this fight. Because I tell people, I tell the younger Native Americans that, we talk about decolonization. I said, but it really starts with everybody. I said, everybody's got to be decolonized, not just us. If we just say us, then it seems like it's just our problem, but it's everybody's problem in this country. We just have to get decolonized. Once we all find a method to do that, then you're going to find real healing. I said, healing will come from that. So no, you know, my warriors is everybody that believes in the spirit that created life, and water, you know, is that great spirit that has provided us the way we are today. So when I first prayed, you know, one of the old medicine men that's no longer here, he asked me in Apache, you know, what did I want? And I looked at him, I said, I need people. I said, people that pray. Then he asked me from San Carlos, and I said, no, I need him from everywhere, because this is a fight for all of us.
Yeah, and that was a question in the chat as well. Was first of all, I want to give the website is Apache-stronghold.com. If you wanted to drop some lines for Wentsler and your support. And there was a question about how can people outside of the country support in addition to the financial way, but um, one of those ways is to invite our waters to go into the hearts of these men and women, because she's a very sentient, conscious, intelligent being and is willing to stand with us and is the most powerful ally that we could ever have if we're willing to invite her to join us in this fight and to go into those places that we can't,
Mm.
and support us in that way, and just moving these hearts of these people who don't understand what they're doing, and in those
Oh,
prayers for them as well, to have this understanding so that their hearts can be softened and understand how important it is for even their children to shift these perceptions that they have, and to just to invite the water in your prayers, to ask her, implore her to go where we cannot go, and help these people make these changes in their own hearts. So we have a couple of
yeah.
questions. Windsor, would you be open to taking two questions? We have two so far.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take two.
Okay, if you'd like to unmute, Carol, I know you had your hand raised for a while.
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering if you have the same issues that we have here. We're finding that these companies are bypassing the permits that are required locally, and then you know, you go to the powers that be, and the company wrote a permit. They don't get the permit approved, but then they're already building. And it's like, well, we're waiting for their permit to get to court, but you're not stopping them from building. And so it's like the cities are like utilizing the fact that the court system doesn't have time to pull the case forward, but they don't stop the construction. But then the government has the loophole that, well, you know, it's not our fault. And so we have a pipeline on an estuary that's already been built, and now they're saying they're going to bring it online the end of the month, and they still don't have a permit to build. And so how do we fight those systems? I mean, because it's just, the governmental system is just so corrupt. Are you having that same issue where you're at?
Yeah, in the beginning, we definitely faced the same thing you're talking about, definitely. And that's why over 30 years ago, we began the process to begin to hammer the local city towns and put our leaders on call. And then it really, how you say, the level of that went even further with Oak Flats. So what we're doing is putting these people, exposing them and exposing their leadership, because they're always doing things after the fact. And then once they get caught, like you said, they assume that the judges will rule in their favor. And so that's kind of where I say where a lot of the people are sleeping, because when we should have support for people who live in the city, town, that's going to be affected, they're not saying anything. So that's what I was saying earlier, that we had to go back and educate them what was occurring to hold their city leaders responsible. So what we began to do about 2 years ago, about 10 years ago, was we began to put strong mission statements to every leader, and putting them on call ahead of time. But I'm not saying that that's been effective, but what I'm saying is that it's brought their attention to what they were doing, and they're going to be held accountable. So now that 10 years later, I'm in this lawsuit against them, now they're kind of like, it took a long time for them to begin to respect, the laws that were in place that you and I follow, but they don't follow. And
Right.
so I think that's what I was saying earlier, that in us unifying in this fight, it's going to expose the ugliness of how our government operates. And then, it's going to take a lot of effort to make that system better, but it's going to be us. Because one of the things I learned is that we leave our leaders in there and we expect them to do the right thing when they don't do the right thing, because the corporation is already at their doorstep already before we even showed up. And so they're already given into what's bad. So we have to find a way. And I think the more we talk, the more we expose, then the difference will start to occur. But we just can't let up. And then I think the other part is that going after corporations, because that's another thing that I'm doing right now, is because they seem to have more of a life, more of a human being than the actual Mother Earth itself. And when the law should be on Mother Earth first, that should be the protection, them secondary, but it's reversed. They have the ruling authority over the land, and our leaders just go with it. So we, the people, need to change that, because what they came across 500 years ago is not the same anymore. And we don't have enough of those things. So we have to protect what's left. But I agree with you. We're going through that. But I think really unifying in a political environment of how we want to attack that is something that has to be a discussion in this country. And we have to hold our leaders responsible for it. But it's going to take an effort across the board, because they trick Indian people and they trick white people, they trick Black people, and they trick Asian people. Everybody else in between, all of us, they trick us. And now it's time that, we're not going to be tricked anymore. And the only way that's going to happen is we got to come together. Because I've seen them play with Indian people against the people here, non-Indians, vice versa, and they get away with it. And that's got to stop.
Absolutely. And so Michael in the comments, thank you, Wentsler. Thank you, Barbara. Michael in the comments is saying that Jakob Stosholm is the Danish businessman and CEO of Rio Tinto since 2021. And basically, that's our guy. Is there another question? It looked like there were two hands up, but I'm only seeing one. So if you did have another question, go ahead and unmute yourself.
I did put my hand up, but you already sort of covered it. It was partly part of Krista's comment, because it sounds to me like this Rio Tinto is globally doing the same thing. And if they're doing it to you and they're doing it in Australia, the likelihood is they're also doing it in India. They're going to be doing it anywhere where there are vibrant mineral deposits. So maybe that is really our key, is to be global about it. And moving on to what you were just saying, and here in England we're dealing with HS2. Part of this whole thing that Carol was saying was, if they do it before you get in there, then the judges will go in their favor anyway, because it's like, well, you've started, you may as well finish attitude. The other thing I wanted to say was that really, well, I mean, I know we have to do this legally, but most of the powers that are in charge at the moment, they're all part of a clique, a big boys club, for want of a word. They're all mates and they're all feeding each other's pockets. So it's not just that, the corporations have got them. They want to be had by the corporations because they're invested in them. And it is really insidiously toxic and poisonous. And I loved the way you said, Angelique, that really the answer is us, the water. I think we just have to fight it on every level, don't we, at Wentsler? There's every angle you've got to hit them, but from around the world.
Yeah. You know, there's one thing we all have in common, you know, and, you know, when we say, well, it's kind of hard, like in Apache, when we use our own language, is way different than English. But when we talk about spirituality, it's all of us. You know, one of the things that we know that is real is we walk out our door and that's what we see that is real. And that is life, and that is spirit that we see in front of us, that we feel, we smell, and we're a witness to it. So one of the things that we all have in common is water. Water is what brings us together. So if there's going to be any kind of unification in this fight together in this world, water has to be number one, because that's already spirit. That's already life. That's the giver of life already. And so it's going to take that kind of unification, because here is like what I said before, like we have the United States has the national forest. So the national forest that protects all these lands is only there for one purpose, for the United States interests when it comes to the value of who they're going to sell it or how they're going to maintain it. There's no value in the life of what it holds. And what's battling that right now is what we're doing here in Oak Flats, is that we're battling the spirituality of it, because this place is holy. And so you have this battle now that's going on between what is sacred, what is holy, versus what the United States looks at as income. And so when you talk to them, they tell you directly, we understand, but we're protecting the United States interests, and whenever Congress wants to sell it off or make money, that's our priority. You're not our priority. So that's what I mean, is that I think that's the same problem we have around the world, but we have to come together when it comes to the water, because the water is already spiritual already. I mean, we don't have to use anything else. The water is a spirit already. It's a giver of life. And so if we begin to work in this unity, then we can be able to put out a greater mission to leaders that are willing, and they need something to say, because there's a lot of leaders out there that are good, but they don't know how to say it. But it's going to take people like us to put it in their lap, to make them say, to begin. And like this bill, you know, little old me in San Carlos, nobody knows who I am, and I'm pushing Gojava, and I'm pushing in the very beginning that we need a bill. So they tell me, well, can you do a draft? And I got no degree in doing things in Congress, but I do a draft and I kick it out to them. And now it's what's sitting in Congress. You know, I mean, I'm like, there are people willing to help. And I'm grateful to people like them, like Mr. Gojava, that believes in the same thing, but we just need, we need to make the effort, and then the doors will open, because we do have people there, but they need help. They really need help from us, but we just need to really expand ourselves a little bit forward and put our necks out there a little bit forward. But believe me, you know, putting our necks out there is the right thing, because we're protecting things for the earth, Mother Earth, and everything in it. So I agree with you. Yeah, I think, you know, about water, I mean, if anything I can leave you with is that water is what connects us all. That's what makes us brothers and sisters.
Yes, and that's a lot of that is already in place in the World Water Law that was initiated at the beginning of this year with Shelley Ostroff and Jan Golding, bringing that through the 7 days of rest and radical healing. And there is a world water community where we could all converge and maybe create some space specifically for the Apache stronghold, where we can all gather and collaborate and brainstorm about how we can take down Rio Tinto. And all of these little scoundrelly people are trying to pull all this dirty stuff on our planet and our mother. So that would be a great place that we can start. And then Carol, I think you had another question. I'm so sorry I called you Barbara before. I don't know, I'm having trouble with names. It's just like going out of my head. So Carol, if you wanted to ask your question, that I would appreciate it. I think that's a valid question.
You're on mute, Carol.
Are you talking about what I posted in as
Yes.
a chat? As a water walker, I would relish the chance to come over there and walk a prayer. But my question would be to you, what would be the most, to help me with the information as to what water source would have the biggest impact? Not just bring the most attention, but provide the most spiritual uplift um, for to get us the biggest impact on. Um, I'm a prayer warrior. I'm I mean my feet are on the ground, but they're on the ground in a different way. And so how can I best serve you?
For me, um, I think I've never like met all of you in person, but to hear what you're all saying, um, it's like what we say, you know, that the Creator's already hearing us. It hears us from our hearts. So I'm grateful for that. It's already started something already. A seed's already been planted, and now we just need to keep watering it. I think that I tell people if they're not able to make it to Oak Flats, you know, where you are is very crucial to us yet, because the water is relative to each other. They all know each other in a special way. And so how you talk there, it affects here, you know, and it listens. But if there's a chance to come here, one of the things that the old people, like my mother, they talked about that they were really concerned about. I mean, all water is number one issue, but deep water. And what they talk about deep water is that if it gets contaminated, because they got minerals in them. And once they contaminate the minerals, it kills everything. And in this place, it's gonna destroy everything above the earth, and everything will begin to collapse. And then there's no life, and then there's death. So one of the things that I tell people, I said, this old man, the way he explained it to me, he said, deep water is like how they make these cars. These cars have a radiator and they have a chemical in there, and it keeps the engine from getting hot. And that deep water keeps Mother Earth from getting hot, doesn't let it get a fever. But once they destroy that, then the fever is going to come. And that's what was the greatest fear, that once they destroy the deep water, you know, they're in the bloodline of the mother. And that was really, really scary. So one of the things that I pray for when I'm in that area where they're drilling, where they're hitting, you know, way down underneath the earth, and all the hot water is coming out, it's really sad. You hear a cry through the pipes. And I remember coming home, and I before my mom passed, and I shared it with her, and she was just crying. She said, you know, they're crying because it's just like poking, it's like a stick poking you inside your body, you know, and now it's crying. She was, I wish you wouldn't have told me, because now I feel awful, you know, I feel bad, you know, they're in that deep water. So one of the big things was they were really concerned about the deep water, because it's going to make the earth, the mother earth, unhealthy. And so I pray about that all the time, because we can't afford the mother to become unhealthy, because everything else is going to be affected by it. And that's kind of, you know, I tell the people, you pray, you know, the mother right now is hurting. And we need to pray, you know, that deep water is left alone. And that's what they're dewatering. That's what they're going after. And then again, shooting the contamination in there to soften the copper so they could suck it out, you know, and let it drop and eventually suck it out. But that's what's happening. But you know, with all levels of water, you know, and if you come there, you feel this all yourself, you know, what's happening. But I think, you know, where you're at too, people that are not able to make it is connecting all of us in a spiritual way, you know. So whatever you're accustomed to and how you do it, it connects us anyway. But yeah, you know, I'm really concerned. I mean, it's going to be devastating, really bad, and the people won't learn this until about 50 years later, you know, or even less than that the people talk about. That's going to really change the earth, the mother, because now it's sick. It's sick in one part. It's just going to spread.
So Winsler, that kind of brings up a question in my mind. Is it something that you encourage people to come to Oak Flat to be there? Is that something that would be serving? And if so, if you could give some guidance about that.
I tell I'm glad that's a good question because some people will finally ask me that question. Some don't ask me, but they because they're hesitant. I don't know why they're hesitant, but I tell people come. You don't have to come as a group. If you can't, come by yourself because it's calling you because it's connected all over Mother Earth. And I said it's you. It's you that is calling. And the way it was told to me is that the mother will speak from anywhere she wants. And right now, this is one of the places that it's speaking from because it's facing death. It's facing to be killed, and so it's calling its children. So I tell people, come, and say your prayers because as human beings, like it or not, I got to say my prayers to forgive what Resolution Copper is doing. But I have to tell the Creator that these are disobedient people, you know, and I got to tell them, I got to talk to it as though I'm pleading with it, but also saying forgive my family for what they're doing, So it carries a lot more meaning because that's what it is that before we had any kind of anger, any kind of evilness in us, we were good people. Everything was at a balance. But ever since this capitalist world has come in, has made us dirty as well too. So like my mother always remind me, son, you're dirty too. You have to remember. So that's why these prayers are really, really important. Because once we touch that ugliness, we're a part of it. But we have to pray. So I tell people, come, and I tell people that if it gets to the point that I need people here, I want religious people. Because this is a religious desecration that's going to happen. This is a death to a holy place of deities, and the world better learn what they're killing. And I tell the preachers and everybody across this country that preachers has a belief that when I put up my call to come, that's what I'm asking you to come for. I said because we have to ask for forgiveness, but also pray for a miracle that, something will happen. Because where I'm at right now, I leave it to the deities because as a human, I will continue to do what I need to do, but I've done a lot, but it's also the home of the deities. And that's a whole different level than us. And I leave it in their hands because they'll do what they need to do. But again, I tell my daughter, I said, and before I say this, I always tell people, no offense to what I say, it's just what I've learned, is that I said, my daughter was really afraid when I moved back to Oak Flats, because I left the reservation and I went back home and I've been living there. And like about a month into it, my daughter came over and she says, Dad, I'm really worried about the miners, the police, all these people that can do things to you, I'm really afraid, Dad, And then I just told her, I said, Vanessa, I said, if I come home, I'm back to the reservation. I said, it's not because of them. I said, it's because the deities didn't accept me. I said, that's what I'm afraid of. I said, because I said, I'm like, I said, I hate saying it, but this is the only example I know for you to understand. I said, it's like an urban Apache who lived in Phoenix all his life, and he comes home, and it's really going to be his characteristics if the people are going to teach him. But if he has a whole different characteristics, they're not going to put much into it. They got to keep moving with what they have. I said, so I've been brought up in the ancient ceremonies. I've been brought up in holy ground, and I said, I feel like I'm well equipped to come battle, and be accepted back, because our people have been removed out of here over 150 years ago. And I said, and so Nessa, I said, when I come back is to is to reconnect myself. I said, so if I'm not there, that means that, you know, I'm dirty. I said, but it's something scary. I said, and I don't mean in a frightful way, but I mean like where are we right now, even us as Indian people? And so I'm happy to say that I'm going to be there 2 years. There's a lot of things that I went through that it's hard to explain. Some people probably think I'm crazy, you know, but it's been tremendous, you know, being back with the birth of our acorn, with the birth of our medicines, with the birth of, you know, the animals, and the animals coming up to me like never ever before. And, you know, it just, now I cry because it's a whole different feeling. And I told her that I can never go back. I can never go back to what I left. I said, because that's what our people were saying, is that one thing they should not take from you is your sovereignty of your belief, you know, with the creator and Mother Earth, you know, and so I feel like I know I have that intact now that I didn't really before, but it, you know, so I guess what I'm saying is that if it's not here, it's anywhere that is sacred to you, because it's still the same thing. But if you do come here, I just say, you know, I'd be so happy to see you, but more so somebody greater than us would be happy to see you. And I think that's where we get gifts of what work we do and how to continue. So if and I tell people the day I call, because the people are still being disobedient, then those are the people I want. I said, because then that will change everything, because we have to do it spiritually and we have to stay with that. Then the mother will know we're committed. The mother will know that it's time for a change.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Wentsler.
So come if you can.
It's beautiful. Oh my gosh. It changed me, just like Standing Rock. The same feelings, the same tears, the same emotion that is still uncontrollable when I tap in to those sacred waters. It moves me in ways that I still don't understand. So one more time, I want to put out the website. It's apache-stronghold.com. Please reach out to our elder and let's get together. We're going to put up something in the World Water Community page and platform. And again, please, if you're not familiar with the World Water Law, do check that out, because that is the one unifying thing for us all to stand behind. And yeah, let's start taking some closer looks at that Rio Tinto and how we can start implementing a little pressure on those boys. Thank you so much, Wentsler. We are going to have to leave now, and I am so very, very thankful for you joining us today and sharing with us how we can support you and your family and all of our family in saving these beautiful sacred lands and waters. Thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing the work. And
Yes,
yeah, have a
yes.
beautiful
Thank you.
day. Thank you, everyone who's watching, everyone who will watch. Your support is so greatly appreciated. This is past the 12th hour. We're on borrowed time with Oak Flat, so please make your voice heard. Reach out to your congressman. Say the prayers. Let's incite and ask the water to join us in this fight. And if you know or have any clergy or religious leaders that might be willing to stand in solidarity for the Apaches Nation's right and freedom of religion and worship, please do reach out to them as well. Thank you so much. We appreciate everyone. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Michael, for teching for us. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you, Angelique.
Absolutely. My
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank you so much. Thanks for doing what you're doing, and thanks for bringing it to us. Really.
Mhm.
It's a steward.